Our guest today is a Marine veteran and the man who leads the Contractor Fight. He's also the host of the Contractor Fight podcast and the former owner of a successful residential painting company outside Chicago, creating millions in revenue. His workshops and programs kick contractors in the ass so they can achieve bigger and greater success. Proud Nation, please welcome to the show, Tom Reber. Hey, Tom.
Hey, guys. How you doing today? Thanks for having me.
Man, it's so good to have you. And, you know, I love what you're doing. I love the energy and the passion you bring to it. Tell people a little bit about your history and how you came to do what you're doing now, helping contractors and blue-collar service guys figure out how to bring their A game.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I appreciate that. You know, I grew up in a contractor family. I had an uncle that was a painting contractor, a grandfather that was. My dad was a tile guy, and my dad, when he went into business, was 6'2", and when he was done, he was 5'9". And so I was like, well, I don't want to shrink, you know, and he was hunched over all day and his knees looked all ratty. So I ended up working for my uncle, you know, on and off and you know, before the Marine Corps and stuff like that. I got out of the Marines, ended up running his crews for a while. And then, like most of us, you know, crazy guys, we think we can do it better. And so I went off and started my own gig. And ended up growing, you know, from really nothing in a little 12 by 12 room in my basement to doing over 300 projects a year within 3 years. And fast forward, you know, almost, you know, probably a decade later, I ended up selling my half of the company. And because I had people tapping me on the shoulder, asking me to help them grow their businesses. And so it really, I try to live my life by certain values and things like that. One of my top values is I want to have an impact, and I felt I could have a greater impact by helping contractors get back their dignity and live the types of lives that they planned on living when they first hung their shingle on their business.
That is so true. And, you know, I love talking to coaches like you that have done it first. And then, because, you know, Taylor and I, neither one of us have grown a blue collar business. We own a marketing company that's done really well.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, for a coach who has already done it, to then, you know, go in and start helping other people do it. You know, so there's a misconception, I think, in business that coaching others is easier than doing it yourself. And it's just not true. Coaching others is probably harder. You traded in the easy job of running your own company for something that is truly harder, I think.
Well, you know, it all depends on the dude you're coaching.
Yeah.
I'll get out of the contracting world here a bit. I'm a head high school football coach here in Colorado Springs, and you know, it's always easier to coach a kid who wants to be coached. You know, a kid who studies his assignments and who comes prepared and all those other things. And it's no different with coaching a contractor. You know, that when the right guy, you know, when he reaches that point in his life or his career where he just says, I've had enough, I'm ready to change, and I don't care what it takes, that guy's unstoppable. But it's only frustrating when I find that I want it more than they do, if that makes sense.
Man, absolutely makes sense. So now I want you to I mean, my dad was a high school football coach, and my brother was a college coach at Oklahoma University. So, you know, I'm very come from a steep of being coached all my life. That's what I feel like my childhood was. I just got coached. So tell me in your words, what are you looking for in a coachable person? I mean, give me the pillars that you feel that somebody needs to have to truly be coachable
and benefit from
it.
Yeah, well, you know, I think right out of the gate, it's a desire to get better. You know, and I don't care if it's teaching somebody guitar, coaching football, or coaching a business. If you don't have a desire to truly get better, if you're okay with being mediocre, then we're not a good fit. Because, you know, the world's full of mediocre contractors and mediocre athletes and mediocre this and that. And so I think the number one ingredient is that hunger and that desire to get better. And then I think the another thing would be, another non-negotiable would be somebody who's got a monster work ethic. And I don't mean necessarily like being busy 12, 18 hours a day. That's not what I'm talking about. You know, anybody can do that. I'm talking about somebody who is going to identify the just couple things that it's going to take to, you know, push the ball forward and move the chains all the time. And let's do those little simple things better than anybody else. I think those are two incredibly foundational things, you know, the work ethic and then that desire. And then I would just say somebody who also doesn't, you got to be able to laugh too. You got to be able to have some fun, because sometimes you just go out there and get your ass kicked. And at some point, if you don't have, if you're taking yourself too seriously all the time, then this growth isn't going to be any fun. And when I look back at successful times in my businesses, successful times with teams I've coached, what I remember more than winning the trophies and stuff like that and the awards was the daily grind where we had fun. And again, I was in the Marine Corps, and I really miss those times where, you know, my buddies and I were going through hard times, and we were grinding together, and we still found a way to find humor and have some fun. So I think those three things, got to have it if you're going to be coachable.
You know, I'm always amazed. Some of the people that have built some of the best businesses, not necessarily the biggest, but some of the best in terms of the way that they're run, have a military background. And I know that you're going to tell me that the military had an impact on the way that you chose to run your business. But I want to hear from you a little bit about that experience, mainly because, you know, the discipline. I have such respect for those that have submitted themselves to a way of life that requires so much discipline, and then in deciding to embrace that, going into a private sector, building a business, you know, bringing services to customers. That discipline, I know, has been one of the things that other guests have really talked about. But tell us a little bit about your military background and how that's shaped who you are as a business owner.
Well, I think, you know, there's so many things popping into my mind as you're sharing that, asking that question. And I think the first way that, first three things that came to mind were just the way I approach building a team. And what I've seen, what I think I learned from the Marine Corps the most in the leadership bucket here would be that if you don't have accountability, if you don't have recognition, and if you don't have fun, you're not going to grow as strong a team as you can. And that's something that I think the military does really well. That's why we pin, you know, the accountability is high. We know that. But then there's the recognition part where, you know, you line up the whole unit and you get promoted, and it's a big deal. And they all punch you because you got promoted, you know, and things like that. And, you know, they pin stuff on your chest, and it's also very clear of how you can advance, you know. Here's what it takes to advance, and here's the accountability that goes with that, and here's the recognition. And then, good God, we know how to have a lot of fun. And I think if you could bring those three things to your contracting business, you can do some pretty special things and create a great culture. In fact, this morning I was on the call with one of my coaching clients in Kansas City, and he and I just said to him, I said, Dan, I said, think about how many times in a day people don't get any affirmation. They don't get any recognition. Okay, the people that just work in your business right now. And you know, you look at since we talked about football a little bit earlier, you think of the Nick Sabans of the world. You see a head coach like that walking around the field before a game or a practice. The guys are stretching. And a good coach is going to walk around. He's going to put his hand on the guy's shoulder. He's going to pat him on the back or whatever and say, hey, man, how you doing today? It's good to see you. I know it's not always easy to get here with the class load you got. I appreciate you being here. That's the recognition part that I'm talking about. It's not just the big things they do, but it's the little things they do. Maybe you got a guy who works for you who's a single dad, and him just getting to work, let alone getting there on time, is a real battle sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes we're quick to jump people's asses about things, when instead, I think if we just go, hey, man, what's the story? What's going on? It looks like you had to grind to get here today. And if we can kind of pull it back and try to affirm them, recognize the effort that they're putting in, And then listen, if it's a pattern of being late or whatever it is in the business, you have to address it, but at least you've built the credibility with them that you give a crap. And so I think that's a big thing that I learned from the Marine Corps.
You know, I'm sitting here thinking of so many people and so many owners that I've talked to that have this mentality that I'm the boss. You know, they need to be where I say do what I say, and it's I. It's not about their people. And, you know, everything about the military, and I've not been in the military. I've got some relatives that have, and I've listened to, like Carter, quite a few people that have built great businesses, and it really is about their culture and their team. And, man, I mean, it, you know, so tell me a little bit, what happens when you start coaching somebody that you automatically see they've got a culture issue? How do you get them to buy into changing their culture?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's pretty common that we all have a culture issue, and so if a business is maybe plateaued for a while, if you haven't grown, maybe you're shrinking, you can't seem to keep people, or you've confined people. I know one guy who, I think in the last year and a half, he's gone through 50 foremen. And so when I see things like that, I immediately go to the culture question, and it really comes down to, are you building you're building a culture one way or the other.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. But are you building an intentional one? Are you building the one that you want? I had some leadership training a while back, and really it's one of the facilitators, he was like, culture is really the behaviors that we teach and that we tolerate. And it just, that definition just stuck with me. And, what kind of story do you want to tell? What kind of feelings do you want to have people have when they see your trucks or hear your name? So every business has a culture. So I always talk initially, if you could wave a magic wand over your company right now, what would people say? We take people through a workshop that we do where we talk about, hey, imagine that, one of your best clients is at a party and your name comes up. What do you want them saying about you and your people? That's how you get super clear on that. And so with building a culture, I think the two most important words in business are clarity and consistency. And so you got to be crystal clear on who you are and where you want to go. And then you've got to do the stuff day in and day out, the unsexy grind, that maybe nobody's going to notice. I mean, listen, we're doing it in my football program right now. I'm a first-year head coach at this school, took over a program that's 23-78 in 10 years. All right. And so losing is all they've known. And we're 0-4 this year.
Wow.
But there are so many good things. There are so many good things that are happening that don't show up on the scoreboard yet because they're foundational stuff. And a lot of times in your business, you start working on this foundational stuff. And, and one of those foundational things might be, what are my non-negotiables for somebody who gets to work here? And this isn't like, don't be late and you can't smoke. I'm talking character stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Like only happy people, or no dicks allowed, or whatever. There's all these different things that are, but they should be a reflection of you. And that's where a lot of owners, contractors don't take the time to get that clarity. And listen, you got to get away. You got to get away for a day or two. You got to clear your mind. You got to really get open and honest and just go, what do I really want? That's where you have to start with culture.
And I think that what you just said is paramount, because there are so many guys out there that don't know what they want. They look around and see other companies and think, well, maybe I want that. And then something else happens and, well, maybe I want that. And they've never sat down and really mapped out what they really want, what works for them, what works for their family, what works for their employees, and to figure out what is that picture. So I know you said you lead people through a process, but I'm curious, how many people do you find that have not really identified when you start working with them what they really, really want?
All of them.
All of them. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll go back to me. When I started my first painting company, listen, I started it. I was, maybe married 7 years, 7 years. I've been married 22 years now, but it was like 5 to 7 years into marriage, and I had a 2-year-old kid. And I started the business. My clarity was I needed to feed my family. Mm-hmm. And so I don't rip on that at all. Like, how many of us start our business because we got to make some more money? Maybe we lost our job. Maybe we hate our boss, and maybe we just needed to take a shot in our life, whatever it was. But then came a point for me, and I think this is where a lot of guys are, where I had proven that I could feed my family. But I knew that there was another level. And that's where most guys, they don't take action when they start feeling that. So the guy who might be in the grind now for the last 15, 20 years, he's got $2 million business. He's proven that he can do this, but he's never called a timeout, and said, okay, what do I really have to show for this thing that I've been doing for 15 years? Is it what I want? Is it bringing me the happiness that I want? If I could wave a magic wand, what would I change about it? That's usually the timeout piece that I'm talking about when we start working with somebody like that, so that they can just make sure that, okay, you're 15 years into it. Let's not spend the next 10 or 15, building something that you don't want.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to slow down to go faster.
Yep. It's the now what question. Now what do I want? You get there. Right. Now what do I want? I mean, that's it doesn't ever stop. You can always want more if you get it and you're ready to retire, but you've got to figure that out. That's really important.
Yeah. And, clarity is a tough thing because there's a lot of voices telling us what our business should look like and what our life should look like. And I was part of a group a number of years ago where, and maybe it was just where I was, so I'm not ripping on anyone else. All I'm saying is I felt like if my business didn't achieve a certain point, I was going to be a loser.
Yeah. When
in reality, what I really needed to do was I needed to look inside myself and define what success meant to me, and use that as my measuring rod instead of looking at the other external stuff.
Absolutely.
Everybody around me. So
one of the things that we, and you've talked about this just even with us just before the show started, there's this mentality, I think, in blue collar trades that, this is just kind of my fallback position. This is the thing I'm doing because, I couldn't go to college or whatever. And I think that sets an internal clock, an internal thermometer, if you will, for what somebody can achieve, because they don't believe that what they're doing is worthy of their time. Really, it's like, I don't know what else to do, so I'm going to do this. And I see some business owners that fall into that. A lot of them, with some time and some success, grow out of that and go on to grow some really huge companies, and not just huge in terms of success in terms of number of trucks or anything else, but I mean, it's giving them everything they want in their life and empowering a way of life that they really only had ever dreamed about. But do you see that mindset being a stumbling block for a lot of your clients or people that you've talked to just in teaching and classes and things?
Yeah, where I see it a lot is, I think we all see it across the board in the trades, is the lack of younger people coming in.
Yep.
And I have 2 teenagers and a preteen, so I'm pretty in touch with what's going on in the school systems. Mm-hmm. And one of my sons a couple weeks ago was talking to my wife, and he was going to go to this the shop teacher at the school or whatever wanted to take some kids from the high school over to this contractor day that was happening here in town, where kids could check out heavy equipment. They can learn about what it takes to be an electrician or whatever. My son was the only one in the school that wanted to go. And
Oh, wow.
and so they canceled the field trip, and I just took them. I just pulled them out of school and took them. And my wife had told me that she had asked my son, you know, what are you hearing on a daily basis inside the school walls about stuff like this? And he's like, all it is a pressure to go to college, and you're made to feel like if you don't go to college, you're a loser. And I'm not ripping on educators and all this, but I'm just saying the system that we have right now in our country is putting so much pressure on kids to not go into the trades because, and I think there's a couple reasons for that. You know, but I think one I won't speak of now, but the one I will speak to is there are not enough contractors totally kicking ass. And so, you know, my dad, like I said, was a tile guy. Guys, I did everything I could do to not be a contractor because my dad never made more than like 40, 42 grand a year. He was always dirty. He was always tired. And there was always money issues in our home. And I'm like, why the hell would I want that?
Yeah.
And I think that's why a lot of kids, they don't know what a successful contractor looks like. And I'm sitting here going, you know, crap. You know, I got a partner of mine who did $1.4 million last year, and just about 700 of that was owner's salary.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, I can't tell you how many contractors I know that are making 200 plus a year. I mean, what other industry? Seriously, if you do it right, you do your homework, you're hungry, you're focused, you're disciplined, you get clear, all the things we've been talking about. Whether trade or industry, can you literally give yourself like a $5,000 raise in a month? You know, I mean, you button a couple things up, and bam, you just paid yourself another $60,000, $70,000, $100,000 a year.
You know, and that is so true. And I'm working with a couple of guys right now, just kind of coaching them on the side a little bit through some financial issues. And one of the things that I am finding that a lot of these guys that are struggling to really get out of the, you know, it's the same thing that we all have. We spend what we bring in. I mean, they make more money and they spend it. They end up at the end of the year not having any more than they had the year before. And what I'm finding is it's a lot of times it's a worth issue that for whatever reason they think because of what they do, it's not worthy of making X amount of dollars. And so really working with these guys on their mindsets about, man, what you do is worth it. It's a worthy cause. You're worthy of making money. And kind of changing that has been really, I think, life-changing for them, just to kind of put themselves in a place is like, yeah, what I do really is important. You know, I say this all the time. You may not think a contractor is worthy of doing anything for you until you need them. I mean, look at what's going on with the hurricanes right now.
Right.
You know, we don't need college-educated people per se, and I'm with you. I mean, I'm the only person in my family that doesn't have a 4-year degree. I've got a 2-year degree. And I'm okay with that, and they are too. But the reality here is what we need is strong people out there that can, you know, return electricity, get the water flowing again. I mean, if you look at Puerto Rico, it's in bad shape. I mean, these are the people we need. We need the contractors of the world. So you may not think they're important or they're worthy, but let me tell you, when you need them, they're the most important people in your world. And those guys need to know that.
Yeah, well, if you're holding a mic right now, drop it because that was good. Okay. And here's the thing. One of the things, one of our foundational ideas here in the Contractor Fight is around your mindset and your value. And we have to, as contractors, take back our dignity and respect, but it starts with respect in yourself first. And this is where sometimes you just need some perspective. You know, when I look at contractors across the board, I mean, if you think about it, we're the backbone of a lot of things that happen. And we create stuff, we build amazing things, we beautify things, we fix things, we provide comfort and relief for people, we make other people's dreams come true. All right, on and on and on and on. And yet we tell ourselves often a BS story, like you were saying, that we're not worth money. And I think it's because there's a lot of reasons. They don't know their numbers. They're comparing themselves to quote unquote the going rate. They let the consumer dictate how much they should charge, on and on. When in reality, 95% of the success that you're going to have, if not more, it's between your ears.
Yes.
And so I think there's some foundational things that we teach in our programs that, are, one of them is, don't make their crap your crap. Okay. So if I go, hey, it's $500 to fix the thing, and the customer thinks that $500 is too much to fix the thing, that's their crap. You don't need to take their crap on you.
Yep.
And you have enough of your own crap to deal with. You don't need anyone else's. Another foundational truth is, it's not your job to find their money, because people will always find the money for the things that they value.
Yes.
And so I can't tell you how many times I did it personally years ago, and how many people I talk to now, that it'll be 9, 10, 11, 1 o'clock in the morning, and a guy is putting a proposal together, and before he hits send, he's like, oh God, I don't know if they're ever going to go for that. And he starts second guessing his numbers, second guessing the value, sharpens his own pencil, and negotiates against himself, and takes 10 grand out of his pocket.
Yeah. Before he ever sends it.
Before he ever sends it.
Yeah.
Okay. And and here's the thing, people, this has been said, this isn't original to me, but people will pay what we're strong enough to ask for. And so, so I think there's that. Don't project your beliefs about money on people. I have one guy who, his dad, kind of like my family, never made more than a certain dollar amount a year. And he had to send a bid once, and the bid was more than that dollar amount that his dad had ever made in a year. And he just had all this head trash around it and that was his own crap that he had to work through, and we worked through it and whatever. But all these things, this mindset stuff, this is why it's so important to listen to a podcast like this, or to be part of certain groups and communities, or mentoring, or whatever. You got to surround yourself with people that are going to be thinking differently than the masses. And that's why I really encourage contractors to check out podcasts and videos and the other things that, a bunch of us have going on. Is it's going to level up the industry. And then in turn, when little Johnny, the high school kid who knows he's not wired to go to college deep down, he can look at contractors in his life that he knows, and he's like, well, God, Joe, my cousin, he's a contractor. He's been in this thing 3 years. He's already making $100 grand. Why can't I do that?
Yeah.
So
yeah. That's one of the stereotypes that we care a lot about changing here, is this idea that college equals success. And, but it's more than that. It's about opportunity. And I think the reason that college holds people's attention, or has held its attention, is because they've been told that that's where the opportunity lies, and that without that degree, there is no opportunity for you. And you're going to be, you're going to be slinging burgers, or you're going to be doing this, or you're going to be doing that. And it's always something else that's not quite up to your full potential. Either that, or they're told you're not college material, which I think is insulting. But, it's this idea that that's the only path of success. But if we can somehow change, and I mean, when I say we, I mean me and Taylor sitting on this end, and Tom, you on that end, if we can, and every other person out there who sees it the way we see it, if we can change blue collar industries, the idea or the stigma around blue collar industries, to where when somebody thinks, where do I go if I want to get leadership, business leadership training? Well, they think, I've got to go into the corporate world. Well, where do I need to go if I want to make a lot of money? People think, I need to get into real estate. So there's these, whatever your goal is, you think that there's some other industry out there that's, the one that I need to be in. When the truth is that all of those things, business leadership, can be taught in blue collar businesses, opportunities to make a lot of cash and have a business that gives you everything you want and can completely run without you, so you can take the time you want to go do other things. All of that can be had in a blue collar trade, and running a business in a blue collar trade. So, we're actively, and I know our listeners are just nodding their heads. That's why they listen, because they understand that as well. We just want to spread that message even further than we have, because when blue collar industries are strong, when the business leaders in blue collar businesses are strong, it changes everything. It's such a huge part of the economy. It changes the perception from the top all the way down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, here's the funny thing. The dudes listening to this right now as they're on the job site or driving down the road, they're already drinking the Kool-Aid, man. They already know this. Yep. And not that all of us don't have some things to firm up and some things like that, but I would encourage the guys that are listening to this to share this podcast with a dude that that needs some help. Because it's the exposure thing. They just don't know what they don't know. And I remember the first time that my eyes were open to what gross profit meant. I couldn't figure out why I never had any money and all this other stuff. And we were doing all this work, and I finally got some coaching around making some money. And this whole thing about gross profit, it's like my eyes were opened for the first time, and I could see like the potential. And so that's why I'm asking, your listeners to share your show, not just this episode, but your show in general with anyone that they can, because the more guys that are getting their heads right, obviously the better quality of work we're going to be able to do, because we have money to stand behind the work and hire better people and all that. But it's going to also help attract more people into the trades, which is incredibly good for all of us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's that high tide raises all ships.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, bingo. Tom, I know people are going to want to connect with you online. Where's the best place for them to do it? Tell them about your podcast, where to find that, and where to connect with you online.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. So they can get everything if they just go to thecontractorfight.com. They'll have access to the podcast there, the Contractor Fight podcast. There's links to our videos that we do and a couple of our programs and sales academies and things like that. So anything that they're going to need in my world, they can get at thecontractorfight.com.
Very good, sir. We always like to end our interview by asking our guest for a quote that means something to them. And maybe you could tell us what that quote would be for you, and then share a little bit about what it means to you.
What comes to mind for me is the way you do anything is the way you do everything.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know where I first heard it. But what that means to me is if I'm disciplined in my health, then I'm more likely to be disciplined in my business. And if I'm a total D-bag on the job, I'm probably going to be a D-bag at home. And so I heard a guy speak years ago, and he was two different people actually, and they both kind of in a roundabout way drove that point home for me. Was you can't be duplicitous. You got to be the same guy everywhere, and those habits that you're building in one area of your life are going to carry over to the other, and everything matters. Everything tells a story, and so I would encourage guys to kind of ponder that and figure out, okay, you just can't pick and choose how you're going to be, because, what is it? What's that story about the frog or who gave a scorpion a ride across the river? And I butcher stories like this, so I should probably just shut up. But, he's like, well, you'll sting me. And he's like, no, because if I sting you, then we'll both drown and die, or whatever it was. And he ended up stinging him. As he's sinking, he's like, why'd you sting me? He's like, I'm a scorpion. That's what I do.
I can't change my nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't. And so to me, that's why that quote means so much to me is, and when I really examine my life, I see areas that, holy cow, it is totally carrying over in ways that I didn't think. So I really try to pay attention to being the type of guy that understands that the way I do one thing is the way I'm going to do everything.
That's profound. That's for sure. Good. Tom Reber, thank you for being on the show today.
Great, guys. I appreciate it. You have an awesome day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.